Welcome to Backstage Church. I'm Nick.
I'm Chris.
And I'm PK.
And we are continuing with our love series. We're going through 1 Corinthians 13. And this this episode, we're talking about love not being easily angered and keeping no record of wrong. Am I correct?
That is 100% correct. And these might be some of the hardest ones in this whole chapter to actually live out in a practical way.
Oh, man. You know, a lot of married people have a hard time with that not being easily angered part. That's...
A lot of married people, anyone really. I think that applies to married people, that applies to parents with children, children with parents, any type of close relationship.
I don't know what your guys' problems are. I'm never easily angered.
Well, we'll talk about lying here in a few weeks.
Next episode, we're talking about lying.
And Chris is going to share many examples from his own life.
You know, I have had several students, not recently, but I've had several students say like their biggest problem is lying. And it's interesting because I don't feel like I've ever really struggled with that. But, I do lie, I guess.
You know, getting back to being easily angered, that is the one thing that you talk about someone lying to me. If you really want to just go over the edge, is lie to me and let me find out you're lying.
Wow.
That is a one thing that it's like, it just... it kills me. Mm-hmm. It's amazing how much stuff I can deal with and I'm not okay with, but I can get through it. But that lying stuff is just one thing that just, that's a tough one.
Yeah. I think we all have different triggers and things that we're more prone to get angry about this than other things. And sometimes we get frustrated when someone else's trigger is different than ours. And it's like we have a lack of compassion and understanding over them. And no one should be easily angered, right? Because that's not loving. But we all have weaknesses and we all have different triggers and we all have different areas where we struggle with that.
So how do we not become easily angered? Because that becomes the hard thing so it's easy to say, okay, if you love someone, you're not going to let them easily anger you. But then they do the one thing that easily angers you. So how do we combat that? How do we get past that? How do we exercise that piece out?
I don't know. I think before you can do that, you got to figure out what is really wrong with getting angry. The Bible even says that it's possible to anger and yet sin not.
Yes.
So I think that anger isn't so much the issue, it's the underlying thing that if you are easily angered, then there's something there.
Yeah.
You know, if you find yourself that, you're just in one of those places where it just seems like everything makes you angry, which right now in the political climate in which we're in, oh dear Lord, it's easy. You find people that ordinarily they're level-headed, and this stuff just takes them over the top, you know? So I think it's just understanding that it's okay to be angry.
Right.
Matter of fact, as Pastor Richard, as he translates that verse of Scripture, I believe it's out of Ephesians, what he's saying is that when we're angry, anger rightfully used will drive us to take action. Yeah. And so when you don't give space for that to channel it in the right way, then it's like be angry but sin not. In other words, there's a proper place for anger in our lives.
Right. And things that there are things that are worth being angry about. Yeah. And there are things that we should be driven to take action about.
Yes.
However, those are things that we're not usually easily angered by.
Exactly.
Those are things that we know we're angered by. Those are things that's like we look at it and it's a prolonged, it doesn't just come up out of nowhere in that spirit of offense or trigger like that.
Yeah. I think a lot of times it's not the anger, it's the easily part.
Yeah.
Because I find that if whenever I personally get in one of those places where everything just ticks me off. It doesn't matter what. Nobody could do anything to
Yeah.
please me, or then what that is an indicator of is that that there's something else going on
Right.
within my heart, within my life that,
Yeah.
that I feel. And usually it's like, well, I'm feeling wronged, or somebody did me dirty, or I didn't get my way about
Yeah.
something. Those types of things that'll put you, at least puts me in those kinds of moods.
Oh,
that you find
absolutely.
that out, so.
Absolutely. I think a lot of the times when we are easily angered, there is a trigger. Sometimes it's something deeper and it's other things going on in our lives. And so to answer your question, I think one of the first things we need to do is step back, and really take a look inside, evaluate ourselves. Is there something within us that we need
Yeah.
to evaluate and
Yeah.
work on?
Yeah.
And sometimes the most loving thing we can do is make sure that we are taking proper self-care, and that we're working through our issues, and that we're making sure that we're mentally and emotionally healthy as well. And then we are able to more often respond appropriately.
Yeah. And I think the anger thing too is the ease of anger speaks more to, okay, what is wrong inside of us? Where are we at? What do we feel not necessarily outraged by, but I think a lot of times it's we get anger, we don't like getting angry at ourselves.
Right.
So we've got to direct it somewhere. So we directed it at other people for supposed hurts, supposed slights, and I think that's where Paul is talking about that true love isn't easily angered. It takes we know Jesus got angry.
Yeah.
I mean, the Bible is very clear about that, but what you see on the front side of all of the anger was, what he was willing to go to, the distance he was willing to go before that ever happened. I mean, and I think that ease is being quickly angered. Something happens and we just automatically fly off the handle and that type of thing. So I think, having a good understanding of ourselves, having a good understanding of what's going on in our, have you ever just been real cranky?
Well, once or twice.
Nick's married. He's got 2 kids. He's got 2 boys. He understands.
4 o'clock in the morning. That's usually
there's times where you just get really, and you lose it, whether it's at your wife or whether it's at somebody around you or whether it's at your kids. And the minute it happens inside of you, you're saying, "Why did I do that?" I mean, that was stupid.
Right.
And then you find yourself having to apologize, Daddy's sorry, Daddy was a jerk, or, especially to your wife, and because you can see, I don't know about you, Nick, I don't know about Heather, but with Tammy, when I blow it with her, you can just, you immediately see it in her eyes and in her face. And it's like, as soon as it happens, it's like you go, oh, what was I thinking? Oh, wait, I wasn't thinking. That's what the problem was,
That's a problem.
So I think, true love does get angry, but true love isn't the easy part. It's not something that you can just quickly jump to. It takes some stuff to get you there, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times with me, it allows anger to take action, but not getting easily angered allows me to actually make sure that I'm acting in the correct way.
Right.
Gives me a chance to think and say, am I acting in the right way?
Yeah.
In this situation, is this called for? Is this not called for? So that way we can make sure we plan that out accordingly and make sure that we can actually, take the right action, the right step. And sometimes, even if you take the right action, but you do it very quickly, you tend to leave the other people behind in the dust. The people who you're trying to take care of, who you're trying to love through it, you basically just plow right through, get it fixed, move on to the next thing, and they're looking around being like, what happened? What just happened? What's going on?
Sure.
What did he even do? And so you haven't even had a chance to even try to teach them through or talk them through how to solve the problem. I mean, part of that happens a lot with...
right.
anybody does any type of training.
So I have a couple of competing thoughts, but so I'm someone who's had an anger problem, especially growing up, even back when I was a kid. I've been to counseling for that more than once, actually. So, and one of the things I've learned is that we all kind of deal with anger in different ways. Some people are more prone to deal with it in healthy ways, where they're gonna verbalize it and confront it and deal with it in an appropriate way, hopefully. Some people they get angry and they just internalize it and they never say anything or do anything, and they just want to wait and hope it goes away, and that is probably an ineffective strategy. And then other people, and this is one where I tend to prone in. I take any anger that I'm feeling and I direct it towards myself, and that is its own challenge.
Right.
If someone wrongs me, I might be offended or mad at them for about 10 minutes, and then I'm mad at myself for being mad at them, and it's a whole thing. But the key in all of this is most of the time when someone wrongs us or someone that we're in relationship with offends us, or we find ourselves getting angry at them, most of the time it's because we have perceived something incorrectly. We perceived a slight against us. We perceived a wrong against us. Right. And I think one of the reasons this is unloving is because we didn't take the time to understand what they were trying to communicate to us. Instead, we made a snap judgment and we rushed to an angry response. And that's definitely not a loving thing to do. Right. We're all guilty of it, but we have got to really to do the work to, in those instances, look back on times when we've been angry and we've lost our temper and say, okay, now why did I respond that way? What is the lie that I believed that caused me to behave incorrectly? And that's been helpful for me anyway.
Well, I think too, Chris, you're right. It's most of the time when we do those snap judgment things, it's because we're responding. We're responding to perceived slights, wounds, hurts, things of that nature. Or even, we've all had experiences as, children growing up or something and it's amazing how quickly you can be brought right back to that place in your head. And then we find ourselves responding out of those places. And I think that's why Paul put those two things together when he said is not easily angered and then keeps no record of wrongs.
Wow.
Because the reality is that most of the time, if you honestly look at it, most of the time when we respond in anger, it's not necessarily about that moment, but it's about what that moment takes us back to. Something that we've held on to, something we feel like, well, it's just not fair, it's not right. How many people have you guys known that have held grudges against family, against friends, against all this kind of stuff for years, hoping for that one moment when they'll be able to get even and be justified and all this kind of stuff. And I think that's why that's powerful, the linkage there. If you don't want to be quick to anger, then you got to learn how to let go of some of the perceived wrongs and don't keep record of them. You got to be willing to just say, okay, because how many times do we try to, we get that opportunity to say what we've always wanted to say or to write that letter that we always wanted to write and just really let them know how badly they've hurt us. And the reality is that most of the time they don't even remember the event. And the other thing is that they really don't care. So then what do you do with it then after that point? So, you've got to come to that point where you are willing to, okay, I can't live there,
I've long felt that many times we naturally kind of want to keep record and pay attention to, and it's like you said, a lot of times we're holding on to these grudges that the person doesn't even know they've offended us, and we never dealt with it. We never talked to them about it, and now it's just an ongoing problem that this is why forgiveness is so important. And forgiveness frees us from the weight of offense. It frees us from the weight of bitterness, and that's why we have to deal with it and release it, and it's healing for us more than anything else.
Oh, it's just so interesting because I'm the person that I don't I tend to let things build up over time, and over time, and over time, and then in a blaze of glory, years of slights just come out in my justification moment.
Yeah.
As I go through item by item, list by list of everything that happened over the past however many years. But it's just really funny because obviously I have kept a record of every wrong that has happened. And I think you hit it very well. When you keep that record of wrong, you tend to just replay that over and over and over again, whether it's to yourself, whether it's to somebody else. And that keeps you from not being able to move on.
Right.
That makes it so it's still in there.
Oh yeah.
So how do we get rid of that? How do we get past this? Because there's plenty of people who are like, that is great. I would love to keep a record of wrong, but for whatever reason, they keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, and it still grinds me the same way every time. How do I get rid of this?
Yeah. Well, again, this comes to where we're all built a little bit different. So for some people, this comes a little more easily than other people. Some people, this is a huge challenge and a huge struggle. And my mind thinks of the classic Clara Barton story, the founder of Red Cross. So someone, I don't remember all the details, but I know someone had offended her, and years later she's working with this individual and loving them, and someone reminds her of the offense. It's like, how are you working with this person like this? And don't you remember what they did? And Clara Barton says, no, I distinctly remember forgetting that. And it's an intentional choice that we have to make. And of course, that's how God forgives us. When it says that God will remember our sin no more, it's not that God has amnesia. He chooses not to dredge that from the recesses of the past into the present.
Right.
And that's where we sometimes flaws. We take the past and we bring it into the present, and it makes us miserable. It doesn't do us any good at all to have that replay going on. And when we replay things, we exaggerate them, and all of a sudden we were having a good day and now we're having a bad day. Just that fast. And it takes, I think, extreme intentionality when those thoughts start to come to kind of work really hard to say, no, I'm not going to relive that. I'm not going to remember that right now. I'm going to focus on positive things and maybe take it to prayer. And I'm just trying to take all the good answers so that
I think that, Chris, you're right on. You know, we think about that stuff and we're constantly dredging it up. And you're right. We have to, the Bible talks about how that God casts our sins into the sea of his forgetfulness.
Yeah.
And it's like we picture God as this tottering old man who suffers from Alzheimer's and everything else. And it's like, no, it's a place that he chooses. You're right. He chooses. And I think along with that, and we've talked about this before, is that we have to, if we're going to live that kind of way, we have to learn how to be able to cancel debts, which is extremely, when it comes to emotions, those things are hard to cancel because they take on a life of their own. And sometimes those things are that people, sometimes the wrongs that people do to us are devastating. Are devastating, and it's like you have to come to the point where you decide, okay, carrying this the way I am is destroying me. It's not hurting them.
Right.
Not that you want the other way around.
Yeah.
But it's to the point where, okay, either I choose to let go of this, or it's going to destroy me, because it's affecting my other relationships. And being able to get, and that's a hard place to come to a lot of times, because we all want justification, we all want to be right, we all want to be vindicated and everything else. And so it's a very difficult place to find that.
Yeah.
But the alternative is even worse, because if we don't, we find ourselves constantly replaying, constantly reliving, constantly letting that thing take on a story and a life all of its own.
Yeah.
And that's not what God intended.
Right.
I remember in one time when I was reading, I believe it's in the book of John, the story where Peter says, I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to go fishing. After Jesus has died.
Yeah.
They hear he's resurrected, but I don't know.
Right.
Once a bunch of women told us that, what do they know? And it's where they're out fishing, they haven't caught anything, and then Jesus calls out, in the morning to them, "Hey, have you caught any fish?" Well, automatically, that was a reminder of one of the first things that ever happened with Jesus in their lives.
Yeah.
He brings them there, and he's got this. He's got a fire cooking there, and fish on it, and it's early in the morning. And I remember when I first heard this, and it just hit me, was that everything that happened in that moment
Yeah.
was a reminder to Peter of what had taken place, because he denied Jesus around a fire. He denied him early in the morning.
Yeah.
He denied him, when he heard the rooster crow, and here's this whole scene that Jesus, has put together.
Right.
And the rooster's crowing in the distance. It's early in the morning, so rooster. And really, what Jesus was doing, he was actually redeeming that entire instance of when Peter denied him.
Yeah.
He wasn't just denying, redeeming the act. He was actually redeeming the very thing. It's just like if something bad happened to you and there was a song that happened to be related, a girl dumped you or something, or for you ladies out there, a guy dumped you, and I'm sure there was a song there or something that just constantly reminds you of that and everything. It's amazing how powerful those memories can be.
Right.
But we've got to allow the Lord to redeem.
Yeah.
To redeem everything around that situation.
Yes.
That is when you can finally begin to say, okay, Jesus, you're going to have to rewrite my story. And it brings us to that point where, we can let go of the wrongs and just don't even keep record of, which is hard.
And good.
Well, so I was going to shift a tad here and see if you guys could kind of come up with one of the ways that you guys specifically are able to erase those wrongs and not get easily angered in that and be able to forgive that. And I was going to go first because obviously because I want to be able to help you guys out there, because we're talking and part of Backstage Church, part of the whole thing is that people talk up here. We want to make sure we bring it down here to where we can all apply it. And we can always, that way they can, while it works for us, they can try to latch on to something and be like, okay, let me try that, let me try that. And for me, the one who tends to be able to know everything that everyone's done to him that has been, that has wronged me, that has made me feel an emotional mess or not in control. One of the things I do is I ironically enough, I do, like when those emotions come up, I don't fight them and try to stuff them down. I actually let that reliving happen in my mind. I get very upset about that. I get that feeling, and then at the end of that, I have to turn around and attach, whether it's, but they did this to help write it, or God has still redeemed them, or I have forgiven them. That's one of the things I was telling Chris. There was a situation that bugged me, and one of the things just in life we were talking about, and at first it didn't seem like I was that upset about it, until he's realized that it has come up in our conversation about 4 or 5 different times, in 4 or 5 different conversations, the same instance has come up, and that's where I've realized with myself, when I keep when everything keeps coming back to that situation, that's my trigger in my head of saying, you know what, I am really upset about this. And then, but as you know, always, no matter what happens, there's always a twist where it comes to, but I know they didn't mean that, or I know that's not what the intention was, or I might not be able to understand what the situation was going on in their life, but I know that I am this, and I know that God has blessed them. So always trying, for me, it's always trying to associate, or trying to rewrite the feeling of my rejection or frustration, and just keep on attaching to it all of the truth, the God's truth that's been given into that. So that way I don't give into that anger in the moment. It's always coming back to, well, that happened. Yes. Do I feel upset? Yes. But now let's reframe this to give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's reframe this to give them glory because they deserve. I'm not 100% in the right in any situation.
Yeah. Yeah, and I believe that's really important because most of the time when people offend us or we find ourselves in anger and wanting to replay things, most of the time they weren't being vindictive and trying to destroy us. In rare cases, perhaps they were. And in which case, I've always believed that we're called to forgive as God has forgiven us. That is what we're called to do. And if God can forgive someone of their offense or their sin, then who do I think I am to hold that against them and to remain bitter? And this is an area where I feel like God has, for the most part, gifted me in. I've never been one to hold on to records and bury those offenses. Now, because it's an area that comes somewhat easily to me, it makes the few times when it really latches on and sinks deep more challenging.
Yeah.
Because I don't have the quote-unquote experience with it. And so what I'm going to say, I've probably said before, and I promise you I'll say again, but it's so important that we don't try to handle it in our own strength and our own power. As much as we like to think, we don't always have control over our own mind, and we have to turn it over to the Lord. We have to go to God in prayer. We have to pray for the person who we're struggling to forgive or we're struggling with that offense. And we have to be so intentional about recognizing that remembering this and holding on to this wrong, keeping that record inside of me, it is hurting me so much more than it's hurting them. And we have to move towards healing. We have to make the healthy decision for ourselves to forgive them and to release that wrong, to recognize they don't owe me anything. There's nothing they can do to make this right, perhaps because they don't need to, or perhaps because I'm choosing to release them of that debt. But either way, I'm going to pray for them. I'm going to take it to the Lord, and I'm going to allow him to heal me, and so that I can be healthy and have that right perspective. And yes, it's a whole lot easier said right now than done, but that's what I try to do, Nick.
Yeah. I think, too, is what I try to do, not always successful, probably less successful than I am successful at it, but I try to remember what, when Jesus was on the cross. And if anybody had a right to be angry at what they were doing to him, I mean, all the man ever did was do good things, but yet they were brutally taking his life from him. And, some of the last words on the cross is, Father, forgive them because they don't realize what they're doing. And I think I think a lot of the times when we are wronged by people, I think we really think that they have evil intent, that they're doing it on purpose. And I would suggest that sometimes that's true. There are those people.
Right.
But I think a lot of times it's just people don't realize that what they said hurt, what they did bothered us, or whatever else. And I think we have to come to a point where and trust me when I say this, it is not easy in the least bit. But being able to say, Father, forgive them, because they didn't realize what they said. They didn't realize what they did. They didn't realize that. And then, because what I've just done is I've just said, Father, you forgive them.
Yeah.
And then it's up to me to just walk in what he's done. In that sense. And that makes it a little bit easier. Not always, but it makes it a lot easier for me to be able to cancel that debt or to release it and just say, I can't allow this. I can't allow what they've said, what they've done, or whatever the thing may be. I can't allow that to control my life. Because then who's more in the wrong? The person who committed the original thing, or me for letting it control me?
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Whew. That was some good stuff.
It was.
I mean, just trying to go through this 1 Corinthians 13, you never would have thought from hearing it from a wedding that all this stuff was actually pretty deep.
It makes me rethink the seriousness of wedding. It sounds like a marriage is a really big commitment.
He's laughing about it. Yeah, I know.
There was I heard a small joke. A lady was telling her mom, who's like, her mom was telling this lady, you should get a husband. When are you gonna find a husband? When are you gonna find a husband? She goes, I don't know if I want to do a husband. I want to do a husband. The lady tells her mom, said, hey, I want to get a dog. Her mom goes, are you sure you want to do that? That's a big commitment.
Oh.
A dog, yeah.
Which is really funny because so is marriage. So I find that funny. But yeah, I think, any other thoughts?
Well, I guess I'll just throw this out there. Well, the off chance is edited out anyway. I am someone who genuinely tries to believe the best in people. And I hope that I always will. And I hope that I'm someone who can always give people the benefit of the doubt. And I know that the more often you've been hurt or the deeper the wound, the more challenging that becomes. And I guess I would just say, if you're watching this and you're someone who feels that weight of how could I possibly see the best of people, how could I give someone the benefit of the doubt, like he was talking about, how can I possibly recognize that it wasn't intentionally, that they didn't know what they were doing, it's all the more important that we really wrestle with it, to turn it over to God and let him do the healing work that only he can do.
That's right.
It's just so important that we don't rely on our own strength and our own power. We've got to turn it over to Jesus.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's good, Chris. That's good.
Well, thank you for joining us today. If these are helpful for you, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so we don't miss the next video. We're going to be talking about
the rest of 2 Corinthians 13. 1 Corinthians
13. Talk about the rest of that. So you guys have a great rest of your day. Night, morning, evening, wherever you're watching.
God bless you.
Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with truth. See you next week.